Hello, everyone. This is my life story. My story may sound strange, but every word is true. This is the life I lived, the life I thought was perfect, and the life that almost broke me. My name is Maria. I am 65 years old. I live in Spain. If I tell you that divorce saved my life, will you believe me? Most people think divorce is only losing. But for me, divorce was the beginning of freedom. People see me today and they say, "You are strong, Maria." But I want to tell you the truth. I want to share my journey. I want to tell you about my past. I was married for many, many years, almost my whole life. I entered my husband's house as a young bride. I had many dreams, but slowly my dreams turned into duties. From the first morning of my marriage until the last day with him, I lived only for him. I cooked 3 meals every day. I washed and ironed his shirts. I cleaned the floors. I kept the house in order. He never had to lift a finger. People praised me. They said, "Maria is a good wife." And I believed them. I thought my value was in serving him. I never asked for anything for myself. I did not buy clothes without his permission. I did not visit friends without telling him. My days started with his needs. My nights ended with his moods. Sometimes I was very tired. Sometimes I was sick. But I told myself, this is love. I told myself, a wife must sacrifice. I believed that if he was happy, then I was happy. That belief was very deep in me. I never thought about life outside him. Maybe you ask me now, didn't you feel trapped? The truth is, I did not know I was trapped. I thought that kind of life was normal. I thought love meant giving everything and asking for nothing. I thought silence was peace. Now I see I was blind. But at that time, I believed it was the only way to live. There were many moments when I wanted to say, I am tired, but I stayed silent. There were many nights when I wanted to talk about my feelings, but he was always busy with himself. I waited for him to notice me. I waited for him to ask, "How do you feel, Maria?" But that moment never came. Still, I never complained. I thought maybe all marriages were like this. I thought I couldn't ask for more. One day I had fever. My body was hot. My head was heavy. I could not stand well. But he asked me to iron his shirt. I stood there, my hands shaking, my eyes full of tears. I wanted him to say, "Stop, Maria. Rest. You need sleep." But instead, he said, "Don't leave wrinkles." That day, something inside me broke. But I did not fight back. I told myself again, this is my duty. My life became a pattern. Wake up, cook, clean, serve, sleep. Repeat again and again. Every single day. I lost myself. I forgot what I liked. I forgot what I wanted. I forgot what made me smile. People outside thought our marriage was perfect. They said, "Look at Maria. She takes such good care of her husband. She is so lucky." Lucky, that word cut me like a knife, because inside I felt empty. I was not lucky. I was lost. But I still held on to hope. I kept telling myself, one day he will see how much I love him. One day he will thank me. I waited for years, but that day never came. Instead, something else came. Something that turned my world upside down. One evening, he sat at the table. His face was serious. His eyes were cold. I thought maybe he was upset about work. I asked softly, "Do you want tea?" He shook his head. And then he said words I never thought I would hear. "I want a divorce." At first, I laughed nervously. I thought he was joking. How could he say that after so many years? But his face did not change. My hands shook. My voice cracked. I begged him. I said, "We can fix it. I will change. I will do more," even though I had already given everything. But he did not listen. His mind was made up. He said, "I want freedom. I am tired." Tired of what? I gave him everything. What more did he want? That night, I cried like a child. I held his hand. I begged him not to leave, but he pulled away. The man who meant everything to me was walking away. I was not able to stop him. For days, I tried. I cooked his favorite meals. I smiled sweetly. I prayed. I hoped he would change his mind. But nothing worked. The papers were signed. My marriage ended with just a few signatures. In a moment, many years of sacrifice disappeared. Do you know how it feels when your whole life vanishes in a moment? It is like standing in a storm with no shelter. It is like drowning with no one to save you. That was me. A woman who gave everything, now left with nothing. But that painful moment was also the start of my real story. At that time, I did not know it. All I saw was darkness, but life had another plan for me. A plan that would one day set me free. This is where my journey begins. This is the story of how I lost everything, and how that loss opened the door to a life I never imagined. The days after were worse. I walked through the house like a ghost. I touched his shirts in the closet. I smelled them and cried. I sat at the table and stared at his empty chair. Sometimes I made tea for two by mistake. Then I remembered he was gone. The pain was sharp. People called me. Some gave advice. Some said, "Move on." Some said, "Now you are free." But their words hurt me more. They did not know my heart. They did not know I had given my entire life to him. Without him, I felt worthless. Nights were the hardest. I lay in bed, staring at the empty space beside me. I hugged the pillow and pretended it was him. I closed my eyes, hoping it was just a dream. But every morning, reality hit me again. He was gone. I kept blaming myself. Was I not loving enough? Was I not kind enough? I searched for answers, but there were none. The truth was simple. He wanted to leave. He chose to walk away. And I could do nothing. I thought my story ended that day. I thought I would spend the rest of my life in darkness. But I was wrong. Life had other plans for me. I could not see it yet, but something new was waiting. Weeks passed. Weeks turned into months. 6 months of pain. 6 months of loneliness. I counted the days, but every day felt the same. Every day was dark. Every night was long. Time moved, but I stayed in the same place. My family kept their distance. They did not know what to do with me. Some friends said, "You are lucky to be free." I did not feel lucky. I felt broken. I felt empty. One evening, I walked past a mirror. I stopped. I saw my own face. My eyes were red. My skin was pale. My lips had no smile. I whispered to myself, "Who are you now?" I had no answer. Without him, I was no one. At least, that is what I believed. But even in those dark nights, a small voice inside me refused to die. It whispered, "You are still here, Maria. You are alive." I tried to ignore the voice. I tried to push it away. But the voice returned. It came when I cried. It came when I sat alone. It said, "Your story is not finished." I did not believe it at that time, but those words gave me something. 6 months passed in pain, but in that pain, something inside me began to change. I realized something. If I could survive those 6 months, then I could survive anything. And being alive meant there was still a chance. A chance for something new. A chance for me. I had to find out who I was without him. Those 6 months of darkness did not kill me. They shaped me. They made me ready for the next life step. I thought my story ended in pain, but life had another plan. It was not strength yet. It was not courage yet, but it was a beginning. For the first time in many years, I cooked a meal that I liked. Not his favorite food, not something he wanted, only mine. I sat at the table. I ate slowly. Tears came to my eyes because it felt new. It felt like I was feeding myself, not just surviving. The next day, I looked at my hands. These hands had washed, cleaned, pressed, and served for him. But now I wanted them to work for me. I asked myself, what can I do with these hands? Then I remembered something. Many years ago, I loved to sew. I loved to make small things with fabric. But I stopped because one day David told me, "It is a waste of time." So I gave it up. That memory made me cry. But after the tears, I felt a spark. I went to the closet. I found an old box. Inside, there were needles and thread. My fingers shook as I touched them again. I took a small piece of cloth. I began to stitch. The work was simple, but it felt like life. The needle went in and out. With every move, I felt a piece of myself return. I was not fast. I was not perfect, but I was alive. In the days that followed, I made more small things. A little bag, a scarf, a small cover for the table. I looked at them and smiled for the first time in months. I thought, this is me. This is my work. This is my choice. One afternoon, a neighbor visited me. She saw one of the pieces I had made. She asked, "Can you make one for me?" At first, I was shy. I said, I am not good enough. But she insisted. She even gave me a little money for it. My hands shook as I held the bills. It was not much, but it was mine. Money from my work, money from my time. That night, I sat in bed. I stared at the money in my hand. I whispered, Maria, you can do this. You can stand. It was not about the money itself. It was about the feeling. For the first time, I was not only a wife. I was a person who could create, a person who could earn, a person who could choose. Slowly, the news went around. Other women asked me to make things for them. They praised my work. They told me I had talent. I felt something new. Respect. Not the kind of respect I begged for from David, but the kind of respect that came from my own work. Every time I sewed, I felt lighter. Every time someone smiled at my creations, I felt seen. Every time I earned a little money, I felt free. But it was not only about sewing. It was about time. For years, my time was not mine. Every hour belonged to him. Now, even when I was alone, those hours belonged to me. At first, this freedom scared me. But then, it gave me peace. I realized something powerful. I did not have to beg for value anymore. I could give myself value. I could decide what mattered. I could decide what to do. It was not easy. I still cried at night. I still missed him sometimes. I still felt the pain of being left. But I also felt something new growing inside me. Strength, hope, freedom. One evening, I looked in the mirror again. I touched the glass and whispered, You are finding yourself, Maria. You are more than his wife. You are you. This time, I believed it a little more. The first steps were small. A meal for myself, a stitch in fabric, a neighbor's smile, a little money in my hand. But those small steps carried me forward. They carried me out of the darkness. I was learning that I could live. I was learning that I could even rise. And this was only the beginning. I never thought small steps could change a life. But little by little, my work began to grow. At first, it was only one neighbor, then another. Soon, people I did not even know came to me. They wanted the things I made. They said my work was special. The first time I earned real money, I sat and stared at it for a long time. It was not about the bills. It was about the meaning. For years, I had worked for free. I had cooked, cleaned, washed, ironed without thanks, without pay. Now, for the first time, the world was giving me something back. I saved that money in a small box. Each week, I added more. Every time I opened the box, I felt proud. That box was proof that I could stand, proof that I was no longer helpless, proof that I could live without David. Orders kept coming. I began to work longer hours, but this time it did not feel like slavery. It felt like purpose. Each stitch was mine. Each design was mine. Each piece carried a part of me. When people smiled and praised my work, I felt alive. I used the money to buy more material. I bought better tools. I invested in myself, something I had never done before. With each step, my business grew. With each step, my confidence grew. Soon, I was earning more than I ever imagined. My savings increased. I paid bills without fear. I bought things without asking permission. I felt a power I had never known before. The power of freedom. But the best part was not only the money, it was respect. Women in the community came to me. They asked, "How did you start?" They asked, "How do you keep going?" They said, "You are an inspiration." I looked at them and smiled with tears in my eyes. Maria, who once thought life was over, was now giving hope to others. I began to help people. I gave free pieces to women who had little. I shared part of my earnings with families who were struggling. I listened to their pain. I told them my story. I said, "If I can rise, so can you." The more I gave, the richer I felt. Not only in money, but in spirit. I was no longer empty. I was full of meaning, full of life. One day, a local newspaper wrote about me. They called me a woman of courage. They wrote about how I rebuilt myself after divorce. When I read the article, I cried. Not because of sadness, but because my life, a life that once felt worthless, now had value in the eyes of others. Soon, I was invited to speak to groups. I stood in front of women who had lost hope. I shared my story. I told them about the pain, about the nights of tears, about the mirror that asked me, "Who are you?" And then I told them about the small steps, the first stitch, the first sale, the first smile. They listened with open hearts. Some cried with me, some hugged me after. They said my words gave them strength. I realized then that my story was not only mine, it was a gift to others. Wealth came to me in many forms: money, respect, freedom, peace. I had all of them now, not because of him, not because of anyone else, but because I chose to stand, because I chose to live. There were still moments when I remembered the pain, but those memories no longer controlled me. They became fuel. They reminded me how far I had come. I was no longer the woman who begged for love. I was no longer the wife who lived in fear of being left. I was Maria, strong, independent, free. When I looked in the mirror now, I no longer asked, "Who are you?" I knew the answer. I smiled and said, "You are enough. You are more than enough." Success had changed my life. But more than that, freedom had given me peace. I no longer lived in darkness. I lived in light of my own making. And this was only the beginning. Life had changed in ways I never imagined. I was no longer the woman who cried every night. I was no longer the wife who lived in silence. I had found myself. I had built something of my own. People respected me. Women looked at me as an example. I had money. I had freedom. And I had peace. Then, one evening, something happened. Something I never thought would happen again. There was a knock on my door. I opened it, and there he was, David, the man who had left me, the man who broke me, the man who once said, "I want a divorce." He was standing there. His hair was more gray. His face looked tired, but his eyes were different. They were not cold this time. They were searching. For a moment, I froze. My hands shook. My breath caught in my chest. Memories rushed back. Nights of tears, days of loneliness, the sound of the door closing when he left me. All of it came back. He spoke softly. He said my name, Maria. I did not answer at first. I only stared at him. Then I stepped aside. He came in. We sat across from each other, just like old times. But the air was different. I was not the same woman anymore. I was not the one who begged. I was not the one who feared. I was someone new. He began to talk. He said he had seen my name in the paper. He said he had heard about my work. He said people respected me. He said he was proud of me. His words sounded strange in my ears. Where was this pride when I ironed his shirts with fever? Where was this pride when I begged him not to leave? I listened in silence. Then he said the words I knew were coming. I made a mistake. I should not have left. I want to come back. My chest tightened. Part of me wanted to scream. Part of me wanted to cry. Part of me wanted to laugh. He wanted to come back now. After all the pain, after I rebuilt myself from nothing, I looked at him carefully. His eyes were soft, almost pleading. He was not the strong, cold man who once walked away. He looked smaller now, weaker, but I remembered everything. I remembered the nights I cried on the floor until I could not breathe. I remembered the mornings when I had no reason to wake up. I remembered the shame of signing those papers with tears in my eyes. And I remembered how I rose. I remembered the first stitch, the first coin I earned, the respect in the eyes of women who looked up to me. The moment I looked in the mirror and told myself, "You are enough." He asked again. He said he was lonely. He said he wanted me back. He said we could start over. Tears filled my eyes, but they were not for him. They were for me, for the woman who once begged this same man not to leave, for the woman who was left like she was nothing. I spoke softly. I said, "You walked away when I gave you my whole life. You closed the door on me when I was on my knees. You left me when I was weak. Now I am strong, and I will not go back." He lowered his head. He tried to argue. He said, "I am sorry. I was a fool. Give me one more chance." I shook my head. "David," I said, "I forgive you, but I cannot take you back. I found peace without you, and I will not lose it again." The room went silent. He looked at me, but he could see the truth in my eyes. My decision was final. The woman who once lived only for him no longer existed. That night, he left again. But this time, I did not fall to the floor. I did not cry until I could not breathe. I did not beg. I stood tall. I watched him walk away, and I felt no fear. I felt free. When the door closed, I turned to the mirror. I looked at my reflection. I smiled through my tears. I whispered, "Maria, you did it. You chose yourself." That was the moment I knew the truth. Divorce had not ended me. It had saved me. It had given me a second chance at life. And when the past came knocking, I was strong enough to say no. When David left the second time, I did not cry. I did not fall on the floor. I did not beg him to stay. I stood still, and inside me I felt something new. It was not anger. It was not joy. It was peace. For many years, I believed he was my whole world. For many years, I thought my life would end without him. But now, as the door closed behind him, I knew the truth. I did not need him. I did not need his approval. I did not need his presence. I did not need his love to exist. I had found myself, and that was enough. I looked at the woman standing there. Her eyes were stronger now. Her lips had a faint smile. Her shoulders were straight. I whispered to myself, "You made it, Maria. You survived. You grew. You chose yourself." The memories of pain were still inside me. They would never fully leave. But now they did not control me. They were part of my story, but not the whole story. They were shadows that made my light shine brighter. I thought about David's words. He said, "I am sorry. I want to come back." Years ago, I would have given anything to hear those words. I would have fallen at his feet. I would have thanked him just for staying. But now, those same words meant nothing. They came too late. I forgave him in my heart, not for him, but for me. I did not want to carry hate. I did not want to carry anger. I wanted peace, and peace only comes when you let go. So I let go. I let go of the years I gave away. I let go of the nights I cried. I let go of the woman who thought she was worthless. I closed that chapter of my life, not with bitterness, not with regret, but with grace. I stood by the window. I whispered, "Thank you, life. Thank you for breaking me. Thank you for teaching me that I am more than what I lost. Thank you for giving me a second chance." In the days that followed, I continued my work. I helped women who came to me for advice. I shared my story with them. I told them the truth, that divorce is not always the end. Sometimes it is the beginning. I saw hope in their eyes. Some of them were where I once was, crying in silence, begging for love, feeling invisible. I told them, "You are not invisible. You are enough. You can rise." And when they believed me, even just a little, I felt my purpose grow. I was no longer living in the past. I was no longer waiting for David to return. I was living in the present. I was living for myself, and I was living for others who needed to see that healing was possible. One morning, I woke up and smiled without a reason. It had been years since that happened. I did not smile because of someone else. I smiled because I was alive, because I was free, because I was me. Yes, I had money now. Yes, I had respect. Yes, people knew my name, but those were not my real treasures. My real treasure was peace, the kind of peace no one can take away. The kind of peace that comes from choosing yourself. I realized something important that day. Divorce did not ruin my life. It gave me back my life. It gave me a chance to start again at 65. It gave me the strength to face pain and still move forward. It gave me freedom. I will not lie. The journey was very hard. There were nights when I thought I would not survive. There were mornings when I wished I would not wake up. But I did survive. I did wake up. And every step, every tear, every small act of courage led me here, to peace. Now, when I sit with people, I do not hide my story. I tell it openly. I tell them about the pain, the loss, the nights of tears. And then I tell them about the freedom, the joy, the peace that came after. People sometimes ask me, would you ever take David back? I smile and say, I gave him my life once. Now this life is mine. That is the truth. I do not hate him. I do not wish him harm. But my path is different now. My heart is free. My soul is calm. I choose peace over the past. And when I look at the sunrise now, I whisper a prayer of thanks, not for what I lost, but for what I gained. Thank you for watching the video. Please support us by subscribing to the channel, hitting the bell, liking the video, leaving a comment, and sharing it with your friends. Thank you so much.